there's usually like, I mean, don't worry, it's like less than 5 people watch usually,
Okay.
so
Okay.
it's not like a million people or anything like that. So don't
Yeah.
worry about it. So before we get started on the actual episode, so I know Oscar Central. I know it's
Yep.
big time of year for you guys. We'll
Yeah.
talk about it at the top. So I usually like to let my guests plug that kind of stuff. Do you want me to mention anything else besides? You want me to mention Awards Watch or anything else,
Yeah.
or
You could
just
say awards watch too.
okay? And then don't
Yeah.
you have like you have a cool little thing too that I haven't listened to, but it's petticoats or whatever,
Yeah.
petticoats and
Petticoats and poppies.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. My period drama podcast.
That's cool. I'll let you talk about all that. I
Okay.
think it's
Cool.
great. I love that shit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think you know, but I live in Durham, and we talked about that a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is
So
awesome.
I know you from back in the NBP days. So I've been following you on Twitter for a while,
Yeah.
and
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
it's just crazy that we've never met in person. I just met Lindsay Dunn in person, and we're like
Oh my,
besties now.
oh my God. I was talking to her earlier today.
Yeah. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
besties now. She's
Oh
inviting me
my
to
God. I love
screeners and
it.
stuff. It's great. So we're going
Oh,
to see
cool.
Megan tomorrow. I'm so excited for that one.
Oh
So
my God. I'm not going to that one. So maybe I'll see you at the next one then.
yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't. Were you at 919 this year? Did I miss you?
I was, but
Oh,
like
okay.
briefly. I was only there for like 2 days of it, because I had a friend in town. So, but
I
next year
got you.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping to like properly do, the full thing again.
Well, I have young kids. I mean, I think you know that, but I have a
Yeah.
9-year-old and a 3-year-old. So like, it's like I
Oh,
go whenever I can. So I saw like maybe
yeah.
5 movies or so this time, and then my buddy Dan, who helps me like edit the show and helps me produce the show,
Yeah.
he went to the rest of the screenings that I couldn't go to. So
That's nice. Yeah.
between the two of us, we saw quite a bit. But yeah, I didn't think I saw you there, but maybe we just kind
Yeah.
of
I
ships in the
also
night type thing.
I had a bit of a weird thing too, just in that I'd just been in Toronto at TIFF.
Ah,
And this year there was like a lot of overlap between what was
yeah,
at TIFF and what was at 919. So I'd like already seen a bit of it. So I was like, okay, I'm just not gonna attempt it
yeah.
with, actually hang out with
So
my friend who came to town.
that's cool. Yeah, that's cool.
hmm
So, all right, cool. Well, thanks for doing this. Just give me, if you're good, do you have any questions or anything?
I think I'm good.
All right, cool. Again, super casual. Don't worry about it. Just be
Okay.
yourself. We'll just have this conversation. It'll be fun. And
Yeah.
I'm going to just give me like 5 or 10 seconds of silence. And then
hmm
so I can take out my fan noise. And then I'll come back in and
Oh
do
yeah.
the intro and we'll get going. By the
hmm
way, this is episode 200
Oh
of
my
the
god,
show.
exciting. Okay,
I
very
know.
exciting. Also,
I-
I will say if I mute myself at any point, it's because I may have to step aside and blow
okay.
my nose because I am in
Yeah.
recovery from my Christmas cold. So,
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
yeah.
hopefully you're feeling better than you were at least.
Yeah, thank God. I'm in recovery at least.
Good, good.
Yeah.
All right, just give me like 5, 10 seconds. I'll come in and we'll get going. But if you need to
Mhm.
step aside or whatever, I can fix it in post. It's no big deal.
Okay, perfect.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast. I'm so thrilled that you are joining me again this week. This is exciting, guys. Now, when the show first started, as those of you that have been with me since the beginning will know, we started with kind of like a current events, kind of like political news, that kind of thing. We did that for a little over a year. And then it transitioned to this top 5 format that I've been doing for the last 6 years, really. This is episode 200 of the new format. So, of top 5 countdowns, somehow between my guest assistants and myself, I've come up with 200 different topics in the world of movies, music, and pop culture, TV. And this is number 200. And that's really exciting. And I didn't even realize that till I was kind of making the brief for tonight's episode and kind of coming up with the script and stuff. And I've got a first time guest on the show for that. And this is also exciting. I love having first timers on the P's, and it's always a thrill for me. This is someone that's local to me. She's a film critic that I've been following on Twitter for, gosh, it's got to be a couple years. And I just found out she was local recently, and I was like, oh my god, I live literally like right up the street from you.
Yeah.
But we're doing it virtually tonight. But she's here, Nicole Ackman from Oscar Central and a lot of other stuff. Nicole, how are you? Thank you so much for being here.
I'm good. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here on such a, exciting episode too with this milestone. And it's so crazy how I feel like you often don't realize where people are based. Well,
Hmm.
whenever you're like on
Yeah,
film Twitter and stuff, and then you realize that people are closer to you than you realized.
Yeah, it's weird. I was just telling you, I have a new bestie out there in the critic community, Lindsay, and from one of my
Yeah.
stories, and her and I have connected, and we've been to a few screeners together, and she's great. And I was like, "Oh my god, you live here?" And then we
Yeah.
saw each other at the at the local film festival, and hopefully you and I will cross paths in person someday too, since we're so close to each other. But I
Hopefully.
really appreciate you being here for this tonight, and it is special that it's episode 200 as well. So
Yeah.
it means a lot to me. I appreciate it. So, I do this fun top 5 show. It's kind of stupid. It's kind of fun. Like we just have a good time. And I have this list of like a to-do list kind of all these episodes that have been pitched to me, topics that have been kind of suggested from my patrons and listeners and stuff like that. And I sent that to you and you kind of honed in on this one, which
Mhm.
I got to be honest, I follow you a little bit over there online. I was kind of surprised that this was the one that you picked, but why don't you tell everyone real quick what we're counting down tonight, and then I want you to kind of tell people where a little bit about you and stuff like that. But what's the countdown tonight? What are we doing?
Yeah, tonight we are doing top 5 movie sidekicks, and
Yeah.
part of why I picked it was because it feels a little outside my usual wheelhouse.
Hmm.
It's I like you said, I feel like it's not the kind of thing that I would be associated with,
Right.
but in addition to, being about, like, all things period drama and all of that, I love, like, franchisey movies,
Okay.
and so that obviously, is makes this, like, a really fun topic for me, and I had the hardest time narrowing it down.
Oh wow.
So I was really excited to, you know, get to talk about something like this that I don't always get to talk about. So
Well, that's cool. That's cool. And we'll talk a little bit
yeah,
about the research and kind of coming up with the list too. But tell people real quick. Now you're a first timer. It's
yeah,
Oscar season. This episode's coming out. We're
yeah.
recording it in early January, but it's going to come out like at the end of January. I do my own movie awards. I think you're aware of that. So I'm kind of
Hmm.
deep into that stuff too. And
Yeah.
I actually coming up with my own nominees. You're talking about narrowing down the list. That was tough.
Oh my
But I
gosh,
think I
yes.
did it. But also you do Oscar Central, you write for Awards Watch.
Yeah.
You have the fun Petticoats podcast we were talking about. So tell people where they can find you.
Yeah.
Tell them a little bit about what you're doing over there.
Absolutely. So I am the managing editor over at Oscar Central, which is a fairly new outlet that I run with Kinsey Venuno and Jacob Throneberry. And we are, we have a website where we write reviews. Right now, we have a lot of our team members doing their like top 10 movies of the year posts
Hmm.
and doing FYC articles for, different things that they would like to see get nominated at the Oscars. And then we also have a podcast where we review movies, talk about what we think is happening in the Oscars race. And this year is a really fun Oscars race because there is still so much that we don't really know what's happening with. We've had like several different films that people thought were the front runner that have since like not been the front runner. So that is always super fun in my opinion. And other than that, I also am a writer and a member of the podcast over at Awards Watch. I write for FF2 Media. I write for Ready Steady Cut. And I have a podcast with my friend Maggie, love it, called Petticoats and Poppies, where both of us are sort of professional training is in the history industry.
Hmm.
I'm currently in grad school to be a public historian, which, essentially just means work at a museum or at a historic site.
Sure.
And her background is in historic preservation and like anthropology. So we decided to start a podcast where we look at period dramas and we sort of talk about what's the history behind it. What are they getting right? What are they getting wrong? Can we expand on a topic?
Hmm.
Maggie is a big costuming nerd, as am I. So she always talks about costumes and what's historically accurate and what's not. And we have a lot of fun over there talking
That's
about that
cool.
sort of thing, getting to mix the two sides of our lives.
Well, tell people what your Twitter handle is real quick, Nicole, because
Yeah.
during this time of year, there's a few like uh, you know critics or people that I've filmed Twitter that I
Yeah.
love that I'm always like reading the tweets. Zoe Rose Bryant. I mean, there's so Matt from Next Best Picture. I mean, there's so many
Mhm.
people that I'm like, what do they think? So
Yeah.
tell people where they can find you, especially this time of year.
Yeah. You can find me over on Twitter at Nicole Ackman 16. That's also the handle for my Letterboxd account,
Love
which
it.
I try to review like every movie that I watch on there, even if it's just, some sort of one-liner. Speaking of Zoe right now, I feel like a lot of my tweets are just like me and Zoe going back and forth about Avatar.
Right.
But
Right, dude, her love for
yeah.
her love for Babylon is unrivaled, I will tell you that much,
Oh my
like,
gosh. Yeah.
her and
She
my
she got me to
buddy
watch it a second time. So,
I that's what
yeah.
that's a blind spot for me thus far, I haven't seen that one, but that her and my buddy Jonathan, the film drunk, I don't know if you're familiar with him,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the 2 of them are, like, champions for that movie, so I'm like, "I've gotta see it." So, I'm definitely
Yeah.
gonna see it before the Oscars for sure, but, Nicole, you're great, and I think everyone should look your information up, it'll be in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
My buddy Dan, who's a patron of the show, he says he thinks he sat next to you at did you go see Devotion at
Oh.
Film Fest 919 or no?
Yes, I did.
There you go, Dan.
Yes, I
So I
did.
think maybe that was possible.
Hi,
He
Dan.
also wants to know, and he's being cute here because I run the Golden Peas, which is my version of the Oscars essentially. But he wants to
Mhm.
know he wants to ask you, what are the chances the Batman wins Best Movie?
Oh, man. I mean, I feel like I don't wanna give, like, a Vegas style odds prediction here, but
Were
I
you
will
a fan of
say
that? You were a fan of that one, though,
I
right?
I think it would be a worthy winner if it
Mhm.
did. It is certainly we're running our Oscar Central Awards right now. I, like, just had to go through and make the, like, Google form for everyone to fill it out, and that is a movie that is appearing all over my nominations for myself, so,
Great. I can't
you
believe
know.
it missed Best Score though at the Oscars
I'm
shortlist.
so upset about that because it's in my, like,
I mean,
top
that's
3 favorite
insane.
scores of the year.
I mean, that's insane. I couldn't believe it.
For
But
me, when
anyway,
it comes to score, it's literally like that, Bones and All Quiet on the Western Front. So I'm
yeah,
literally like, how like, where are my
I
scores
know.
at?
And they're
Yeah,
missing, yeah. And Bones and
yeah,
All was Reznor Ross, right?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I mean, just and they did Empire of Light too. And
Yes, which I love that score as well. Yeah,
yeah, I'm just like, what? Like, what am I
yeah.
missing here? Yeah. So
So
anyway,
confused.
not necessarily an Oscars discussion tonight, but I'm with you on a
Yeah,
lot of that stuff. So, and
yeah.
you're a great person to follow over there if anybody's into that stuff. However, tonight we are getting a little juvenile. Well, maybe I don't know. I don't know where your list is, but we're talking
Yeah.
about our top 5 movie sidekicks.
Mhm.
And you were talking earlier about narrowing down the list and how it was tough for you. So,
Yeah.
what was your approach with this list? And don't give away any titles up front or any
Okay.
characters up front, but how did you kind of compile your list? Was it, I mean, obviously it was
Yeah,
difficult, but what did you do over there?
it was. So first I sort of just sat down and wrote down like everyone that I thought of off the top of my head.
Hmm.
Obviously leaning a lot into sort of Disney things, Marvel things,
Yeah.
sort of franchisey things. I almost said something that I think would have given away an answer. And then I went through and I was like Googling like all the like lists of like best film sidekicks of all time and like combing through them for anyone that I hadn't thought of off the top of my head. And I will say my number two is actually something that I like hadn't thought of. And then I saw it on the
Mm,
list and I was like, oh, that's not like a traditional sidekick, but you really could call it a sidekick. So
hmm.
I'm maybe there's one or two where I'm pushing a little bit on what sidekick means, but I felt like I was going through and trying to pick. I had a list of like 20 and then trying to narrow it down to 5 and then like an extra 5 for honorable mentions. Felt like I was killing off like my children or something. I was
Right.
like,
No, it's tough. I mean, try
yeah.
doing this for a show every week for,
Oh my
6
gosh. I
years.
don't know
It's like
how you do it.
every week I'm just like, oh my God, I can't mention this. And then there's some movies
Yeah.
that I love so much that, like Jaws, for example, you see the poster behind me
Yep.
on video here. But I mean, that one, for example, anytime any topic that even remotely Jaws would fit in, I like put it on a list. And people are
Yep.
like, you mentioned that 50 times, but you haven't mentioned,
Right. Like you can't talk
XYZ.
about the same movie every week. And yet,
Right. Right.
like, yeah.
Right. For sure. So for me, coming up with movie sidekicks, it was somewhat similar. I mean, I kind of just started kind of just brainstorming and coming up with ideas. And what was interesting about this list, though, was that there was maybe 3 or 4 that came to mind right away. But then I started to kind of having to do the Google thing, and I was like looking up, different lists that people have done, and it was like you felt dumb because you look at it and go,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, of course." Like, why didn't I think of that? But I didn't want to go super obvious either. So
Yep.
there's some like no brainers, if you will, that I kind of put in my
Yeah.
honorable mentions. So
Okay.
I've kind of gotten cute with my show because I feel like my guests might mention it, or it's like the consensus kind of like,
Right.
this is the pick, like I mentioned Jaws, but when we did, movies that take place on the water, it's like, I mean,
Right. Like,
obviously,
okay. Obviously
you know,
Jaws.
you know.
Yeah.
So I think there's a couple in this category too, but
Mhm.
It was cool to come up with it. It's been a long time actually. I had to go back and look at my notes from that episode, but about 5 years ago, me and my friend Tony did top five movie duos,
Okay,
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
can look at some of those and you can go, okay, who's the lead, who's the sidekick, and I kind of use
Right.
that a little bit too to kind of
There
refresh my
were a
memory a little bit.
few for this one where I was having to sit there and be like, "Okay, is one of them really the sidekick or are they just a
Right.
duo?" Like, can I really say that one is the sidekick to the other? So, yeah. It's funny how whenever you try to make a list like this, you suddenly start questioning, like, the parameters of what it
I
is,
know.
like,
I
it's
know.
sitting there
Well,
like, "Wait, what is a sidekick?"
let's see. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no wrong answer. So let's see what you got. Nicole Ackman's here. First time guest. I'm so excited. I don't know. I feel like we've known each other for like years, but here we are for the
No.
first time. So I really appreciate you
Yeah.
being here. So what's your number five movie sidekick?
Okay, so number 5, I'm cheating a little bit in that it is 2 sidekicks, but they really I feel like you have to give them together. And that is Tanya and Rosie from Mamma Mia and Mamma Mia 2.
Oh,
Um,
dude, I love the mom. You know what's
oh
funny
my
about you
god.
mentioning that is I'm not a
Yeah.
musicals person. Like I don't like I'll like one musical every 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I love the Mamma Mia films. Like they're
Oh my
so
god, they
fun.
are the most fun movies of all time. Like,
Yeah,
and you can tell it's one of those things where you can just tell that the actors had so much fun making them, and especially, like, Christine Baranski as Tanya,
yeah,
um, and Julie Walters as Rosie. I think they are so fun. I think they really help make the movie what it is, and I think that, like, that's one of those sidekicks where having Tanya and Rosie makes Donna so much more interesting.
sure,
And having, the camaraderie between them and seeing how the 3 of them interact, I think really makes Donna a better character. And they're not like the first person that popped to mind whenever I was singing sidekicks. And then I was going through stuff and I was like, wait, you know who the best sidekicks are? It's Tanya and Rosie, really. Like they had to make my
right.
list.
Right. No, I'm behind it 100%. Like I said, people are always surprised. I shared these movies with my grandma, and she's recently passed away. She passed away about six
Hmm.
months ago, and I
Oh, I'm
just she
sorry.
loved the musical in general. She loved the movies. Like she was Italian, so I don't know, she just
Oh yeah.
really
Yeah.
got into the whole thing, and I don't know her being so passionate about it. It's like I couldn't not like it. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like she would
Yeah.
hold it against me or whatever, and I don't know. I just had such this fun relationship with these films and fond memories with it. But I think that's a great pitch. And Tanya and Rosie, so I get both of them, huh? You're doing,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
really appreciate guests that come on the show the first time and they cheat immediately
That's me. That's me.
right out of the
Yeah.
gate. Like, thanks for having me on the show. I'm going to do this.
Well, I
No,
was
it's great.
trying to pick one and I was like, "Oh, I'll just say Rosie." And then I was like,
Sure.
"No, I need to say Tanya." Wait, but I can't not say Rosie. Like I was going back and forth and I was like, "You know what? I'm just going to cheat."
Yeah, sure. I don't blame you. All right. So for my number five, I went off the rails a little bit with my number five, but I did see it come up on some lists and stuff, and I was like, yes, absolutely. But I'm going to go with Hit Girl from Kick Ass,
Oh.
portrayed by Chloe Grace Moretz, who has remained, and this movie was in 2010, I think, or 2011.
Mhm.
And she's remained one of my favorite actresses in Hollywood. Like, I love her. Like, everything I see her. I mean, even when she was in the Tom and Jerry movie, I was like,
Yeah.
she's got so much charisma, so much charm, and she's such a great actress in everything she does. And, in Hit Girl, is this young girl. I think she's supposed to be like 12 or 13 in the movie. And maybe, I don't know how she actually was, but she's just like literally kicking ass, and she's with Nick Cage. She's Nick Cage's sidekick. She's a superhero, but she's like a real person that kind of has this training, and the action sequences were great. And I'm kind of biased when it comes to her, but directed by Matthew Vaughn. This is a
Mhm.
movie that has great action. It is got its tender moments. I don't know if you're a huge Nicolas Cage fan, but I am, and I love just kind of like that relationship with him and Chloe in this movie. And I think she just brings out that kind of like the sensitive parts of this movie that wouldn't otherwise be there. But she also kicks ass in it, so that's why it's my number
Yeah.
five. Are you a fan of this one?
I really like that answer and that's actually also really funny because I have someone from another Nicolas Cage movie in my honorable mentions, which,
Okay,
we'll get to later. But
all right.
I think that, anyone who can like hold up a candle whenever they're against Nicolas Cage and really engage with him in a fun way, that's gonna be a win for me.
And especially at that young of an age. I mean, think about how
Yeah.
intimidating that must have been. I mean, I'm not an
Oh my
actor,
god,
but I
yeah.
mean, one of your first
It's
shots
Nicolas
ever is with
Cage. Yeah.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So that's a fun one to revisit too. That movie holds up. It
Mhm.
has great rewatchability. So I was like, yeah, let's put Hit Girl on there. Now, some people are going to give me shit because I'm going to have some of these others that are in my honorables, and I got Hit Girl here, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to be
Hey,
super obvious. So
you get points for creativity, you know?
yeah, sure. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah.
All right, so I love the Mamma Mia start to your list over there. What is your number 4 movie sidekick?
Mine it's so funny, I just said points for creativity, and I feel like I'm about to, like, lose any points of my own for that, but I also
Yeah,
feel like this is one that people would call me out if I didn't say,
sure.
because I feel like it's so well known how much I like this character, and that is Bucky Barnes.
Oh, good one.
Particularly, Captain America, the first Avenger, where we really see him in that sidekick role. And I think that that's so important as setup for the rest of all of, Steve Rogers' character development over the rest of the whole MCU,
Mhm.
obviously comic books as well. But I love Bucky. I think that he and Steve has such fun banter. That's one thing I'm always looking for in a sidekick is them
Yeah,
providing some sort of banter, comedic relief, and if they can also provide like some of the emotional stakes of the movie, then
right.
that's everything I could ever ask. And I feel like Bucky Barnes totally fulfills all of that. He's got some great, lines like the whole till the end of the line thing with him and
Mhm,
Steve and the, don't do anything stupid while I'm gone. I can't,
mhm,
you're taking all the stupid with you, like all of that sort of stuff. And then
right.
I just think that he and, Seb Stan and Chris Evans have great chemistry together. So they're a duo I would like to see in other films as well.
I agree, and then crossing over, to the small screen too, is great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I've got this, and I know this is probably not gonna ring well with you, but some of my regular listeners does, but I got this MCU fatigue, man. Like, I just can't
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, I know it's a thing, and I'm not the only one, but I just can't
Yeah.
get as excited about stuff as I did, like, 5 years ago.
And
I
part of that is, like, honestly, my thing with Bucky is that I'm like, I go back to watching these earlier
Mhm.
movies,
Yeah, for sure.
and I really do love some of the newer projects, and obviously, like, I loved Falcon and the Winter I'm probably Falcon and the Winter Soldier's biggest fan
Oh, yeah.
because
Yeah, no,
it's,
I mean, it
like,
was
my
good.
2 favorite sidekicks getting a show for themselves.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, I totally and I honestly, part of it's just they're releasing too much at once, I feel like now.
Yeah, it's just too much.
Yeah.
That's the thing. But not to take away from your pick, because that is
Yeah.
actually that was in the kind of era where I was like, I was all in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Bucky and a lot of the other characters that were in that era, really spoke to that. And I loved WandaVision.
Mhm.
Recently, Wakanda Forever was great. I mean, there's
Yeah.
stuff I like. It's just weird as a movie fan when I can remember sitting on my couch and like the trailer for an MCU movie comes out 5 years ago, and I'm just like so excited. I'm like setting my
Yeah.
alarm to be ready for it, and
Yeah.
now it's just like, okay, yeah. I mean, I'll check it out. So I know
It's
it's
like, "Oh
just a
god, another one?"
strange, yeah, it's just a
Yeah.
strange kind of trajectory, but good pick nonetheless. And it's one of the
Yeah.
best characters for sure from the MCU. So Bucky is your number 4.
Mhm.
My number 4. Now I meant to ask you this in the top,
Okay.
Nicole. I kind of realized in my research that this topic lends pretty well to like animated characters. Did you notice
Mhm.
that too?
I did definitely, yeah.
So this is the first of 3 animated characters in my top 5.
Oh my god,
So
amazing, okay.
I have young kids. My daughter's 21, but I mean, as she was growing up too, I was, collecting these movies and watching a lot of these movies with her. And now I'm doing it with my 2 young sons. But first up is going to be Donkey from Shrek, voiced by Eddie
Mhm.
Murphy. One of the great comedic talents of all time in Eddie Murphy, just period. Whether you're talking stand
Yeah.
up, film, whatever, especially like in the 80s and 90s. I mean, this guy was killing it. And then he kind of like did this thing where, I mean, I assume he was taking paychecks or whatever, but he did this thing where it
Yeah.
was kind of like, Disney family films. He kind of lost his
Mhm.
edge. He wasn't doing stand up. It was kind of, I mean, he was getting paid. He was doing his thing, but it was kind of like a weird detachment from what we'd been used to. And
Yeah.
then you circle back around in the early 2000s and mid 2000s when he started doing these Shrek films, and his caricature of Donkey, like, he invented a animated icon, in my opinion. Like,
Yeah.
this is one of the greatest like animated sidekicks ever. I mean, this guy, and it's because of his voice work and how funny he brought back a lot of that edgy comedy, but like made it kind of okay, to watch with your kids, hearing it
Yep.
through the voice of Donkey. But just such a memorable character. I love Eddie Murphy. So it's my first of three animated characters, but Donkey's my number four. What do you think?
I really appreciate that. He is one that I saw. I feel like he cropped up on almost every list that I looked at online. And this is maybe controversial. I'm not a Shrek fan.
Really?
I don't love the Shrek movies. I haven't seen Puss in Boots,
What about
the
Shrek
last
2?
Delicious
Because
episode.
Shrek 2's Shrek 2's a
It
masterpiece.
is.
Easy.
It is my favorite of the Shrek movies, but
All right,
like
okay.
I
Sure.
think it's that Shrek as a character just like does not vibe with me.
Ah.
And the only thing that I truly love in those movies is Donkey. Like I
Yeah.
could, if I could just get Eddie Murphy's Donkey, like
Yeah.
doing his own thing,
I'm
I would
surprised
watch
that
it
hasn't
every
happened,
day.
actually.
Right? And now I'm literally like, why have they never made like a TV show or
Yeah, no,
something?
they got the Puss in Boots
But
stuff.
right? But like Eddie Murphy, I think anytime he does some sort of animated sidekick, like my Eddie Murphy character of choice is Mushu in Mulan.
No, that's a good sidekick too. Yeah,
Yeah, who's also a great sidekick. But I think he does,
absolutely.
you're right, he brings such a almost a universal humor to his characters. That's something that like, he's got things that kids can appreciate, and he can use his voice in a way that I think kids can pick up on
Mhm.
it being funny, even if they don't like fully understand what's being said, but
Right,
also has some appeal for older audiences too. So I think that's a
right,
great pick.
right. That's actually that point that you made is going to be a very similar point, almost verbatim to what I'm going to make to my number one when it comes up. But
Oh, okay.
I do agree with you that Eddie Murphy's portrayal of Donkey is kind of kind of reverberates from what I'm going to be talking about here shortly. But I do think that he took, like I said, kind of some of the edgy history of his comedy and kind of
Mhm.
like, that on edge. But then it was also obviously an animated kind of, I don't even know if, I mean, I guess Shrek is a family. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a family
Yeah.
franchise, but
Yeah.
there's still some, like you said, kind of adult humor in it that kids aren't
It's
going to
one of
get.
those family franchises that then I feel like I watched as a kid, and then I got a little older and I watched it and I was like, "Why was this marketed as a family film?" Like,
Right. Right. No,
yeah,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
yeah.
It can be a little edgy at times.
Mhm.
But that's one of those movies. I know you said you're not a huge fan of the franchise, but like Shrek 2, for example, that's why in my mind, at least, like Shrek
Yeah.
2 is almost timeless because like my 3-year-old could die laughing at it.
Yeah.
And I just turned 47 and I'm over in the corner laughing even harder. Do you know what I mean? But it's the
Yeah.
same jokes. So it's a really beautiful kind of like lightning in a bottle situation when filmmakers can do that and writers. So Shrek 2 is my favorite of the bunch. But
Mhm.
yeah, Donkey, I think, is a timeless character. So it's my first of three animated characters at my number four. And we're up to your number three. What do you got over there, Nicole?
Yeah. Okay, so this is one for me that I feel like is maybe a little bit basic, but
Hmm.
it's not for me because I actually watched this series for the first time last year.
Hmm.
Uh, Finally got around to watching Lord of the Rings.
Ooh.
And so I had to put Samwise onto this
Yeah.
list because I think that he is, such a great sidekick. I think he's
Mm.
like maybe the best character in the whole series.
Sure.
He's definitely
Yes.
the most likable character in the whole series, like the one with the best intentions the whole way through.
Hmm.
Um, and again, like I said, what I really like in a sidekick is somebody who can bring some humor, but also bring some sort of emotional stakes to their relationship with our hero. And you definitely get that, like the friendship between, Sam and Frodo as it plays out over, especially all three films, is so beautiful and so moving. And so I felt like I had to put him on my list, especially because, having a fresh reaction to watching all three films last year,
Sure.
I
That's-
wanted to include him.
That is hilarious, by the way, that you just watched those last year because I also just watched those last year.
Oh my
I,
gosh.
I know, isn't that funny? And then people
Yeah.
look at me like that when I say it, and now I'm with somebody that kind of feels my pain. But I
Yeah.
just I had seen portions of the original film when it came out, and
Mhm.
I was not in a place in my life where I was like going to watch a 3.5 hour epic, so I just
Yeah.
never sat through the whole thing. And then the kind of craze passed me by or whatever, I have a
Mhm.
friend that's a patron of my show. His name's Caleb, and he is a super fan of this franchise. And I do this thing on my Patreon where I let patrons pitch a franchise to me, and we watch it together for the first
Mhm.
time. So
Yeah.
last year I watched all of them with him, and I love them.
Mhm.
Just epic on so many scales. Uh,
Yeah.
Samwise is in my honorable mentions because I kind of
Okay.
thought I'm surprised you saw it this recently. I don't know why I thought in my mind like, oh, she's going to love Lord of the Rings. There's no way that that's going to get
Well,
missed.
what's funny is that, like, I feel like everything about me makes it seem like I would be a Lord of the Rings person,
Yeah,
like,
sure, yeah,
I was a Harry Potter
yeah,
person, a Percy Jackson person, but
yeah.
I was intimidated, and, like, this is gonna sound so dumb, but I always thought there were more than 3 movies, and I think it's
Mm,
because people talk about them in such a way because the movies are so long
yeah,
that I was like, "Oh, there must be a ton of them," and then I was like, "Oh,
mm,
it's just 3, I can handle that."
yeah. We
Like,
can do that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm glad I did. And I bought them after I did that series with him,
Mhm.
and they're great. I mean, some of the best movies ever made. The Two Towers is my favorite, but
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
Samwise, I mean, that's one of the all time movie sidekicks. So I'm glad he got some love tonight. So that's your number three. My number three is not Samwise Gamgee. It comes from a kind of silly comedy from the 1980s, but it's probably in my top 20 to 25 movies of all time. Not because it's like this craft, like beautiful, well made thing or anything like that, just because of the nostalgia. It came out in 87. I would have been 12, 13 years old. And I've
Mm,
watched it probably at least 100 times since then. But it's Cameron Fry from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You ever seen
okay.
this one?
I have actually seen half of it.
All right.
One of those things where it was, like, on and I, like, caught it halfway through, but this is one that I actually saw pop up on quite a few lists whenever I was
Okay,
doing my
good. Well, that's
research.
good. That's
Yeah.
good though. But this is one of the ones that came to mind pretty early on for me without having to look it up because I just have seen this movie so many times. But it's a high school comedy. John Hughes at the helm here, so it's kind of like what you would expect. It's got its touching moments, but it just centers around this guy portrayed by Matthew Broderick who wants to skip school. And he wants to have a good day with his friends. This is last hurrah of his senior year, and they know they're going to kind of be splitting after the summer, and him and Cameron and his girlfriend Sloane, the three of them just kind of go out of this day on the town and just live it up. And Cameron is such a great wingman and such a great best friend because he sacrifices himself so that his friend Ferris can have the day of his dreams and kind of go out on this high note in high school. And you always get the sense that Cameron is kind of taking a backseat to Ferris, but he knows that and he's kind of okay with that and to lift Ferris up. So it's kind of a deeper hidden meaning there too, in terms of like the friendships that we have and how we kind of, play off of each other and what our place in each other's lives is and that kind of, especially when you're that young in high school and so on. So Cameron Fry, I love this movie. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is one of my favorite '80s films. So I don't know. Do you know Cameron? I mean, does that ring a bell when I mention that character? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah. I can picture him, like, in my head even.
yeah, Alan
It's
Ruck.
definitely one of those movies that I've always meant to go back and, like, watch the whole thing because
Mhm.
I really do love sort of any high school film like that that really deals with that has, like, a really nice friendshp
Yeah,
at
it's like
its, sort of core.
coming of age, and
Yeah.
John Hughes, and but Alan Alan Ruckus Cameron has got some of the best, like most memorable scenes in this movie. He's a scene stealer. I mean, that's what he
Yeah.
is in this movie. He's a literal scene stealer. Every scene he's in, it's like the camera's on him. All of your attention is on him, and it's one of my favorite '80s films. So I thought of it right away. I didn't think it would be like a common quote unquote pick.
Mhm.
So I figured, yeah, here we go. So it's my number three. So there you go.
Yeah.
You have to report back to me when you get through the whole. I think it's on
Absolutely.
Netflix right now. It's not
Oh,
like you have
perfect,
anything
okay.
going on with the Oscar season or anything. Just
Yeah.
watch it.
Right, I'm, like, not watching any movies right now, like,
Yeah, you're fine. You're
yeah.
fine. All right. So
That
that's my number
actually
three.
leads yeah, that leads so well into my number 2,
All right.
because my number 2 is from another coming of age movie, another, like, high school film,
Mm-hmm.
and I read the book that this movie is based on when I was in high school, and then the movie came out, and I was obsessed with both. Like, this was like my thing.
Hmm.
And this movie has a lot of actors that are some of my favorites in it. What's funny is that the sidekick that I'm going to talk about is not an actor that I particularly like,
Mm.
but they are so good in this role that like I can, move past it for the sake of this.
Hmm.
And the movie is Perks of Being a Wallflower.
All right.
And I was so obsessed with this. And I think part of it is because the character of Charlie, making these friends and going into this friend group, I think is such a compelling story. And Patrick, as played by Ezra Miller, is such a fun but also heartbreaking character. I think he's a really great character and sidekick in that, he's very much there to support Charlie and to sort of bring Charlie into this different world, this different set of experiences that he's never had before. But at the same time, he has his own inner life, and Patrick is dealing with being gay in this time period in this town and, not being accepted by everyone. He has his own relationship with his stepsister,
Hmm.
that he's sort of navigating. And I think that he's a really well formed character.
Hmm.
But then, the way that he and Charlie interact is so both fun to watch and endearing. And I also quote him all the time. Like, there's this part where he gets back like a bad grade and he's like below average. And I do that anytime I,
I love it.
don't do great at something. So I
Sure.
had
Yeah.
to include him.
Well, you're going to be disappointed. This is a blind spot for me. This is a
Oh my
movie that
gosh.
I know.
Okay.
This is a movie that's been recommended to me on many occasions. My daughter loves this
Hmm.
movie, and she's been
Oh,
like, "Dad, what are you doing? Like, you need to watch
yeah.
this." So, so Patrick is the sidekick.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, portrayed by Ezra Miller.
Yes.
All right, so I need to check it out for sure. Then, so
Yeah.
this is like the
Issues with Ezra
10th.
Miller aside, it is worth watching.
Yeah, well, I'm sure this
Yeah.
was pre their
Very.
issues, but
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's one that I wish I had seen because so many people when it comes up, I'm like, I feel, how you feel shame sometimes where you're like, I can't believe I haven't seen that.
Yeah. Well,
Probably like me
I
and you
do
felt
think
on Lord of the Rings before last year.
literally, but I also think it's one of those things like it came out at the exact right time for me because I was in high school, like at the end of high school when it came out.
Hmm.
And it's sort of like that thing for me with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like it kind of came out too early for me.
Yeah. No, I get it.
So there are some of those movies where it's just like if you miss it, then it feels
Yeah.
like you never get back to it.
You got to work it in. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So Patrick from Perks of Being a Wallflower is your runner up. So good pick. So I got two animated characters for my top two. And
Okay.
I was kind of like toying with who to put at number one, who to put at number
Yeah.
two. But my runner up is going to be Buzz Lightyear from the Toy Story franchise.
Nice.
All right. Voiced by Tim Allen. I'm in love with these movies.
Mhm.
I graduated high school in 94. The first one came out in
Okay.
95. So I
Yep.
wasn't like a kid, but, I still was drawn to this kind of like revolutionary animation that we saw with Pixar. And, you look back at the 95 Toy Story now and you go, that looks horrible, but in 95, your
Yeah.
eyes were like, oh my God, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. I feel like I'm in the future. You know what I mean? And
Mhm.
just to see where, Pixar's come and where animation in general has come, a lot of that is owed to Toy Story being the first really feature length of that kind of digital animation. But the
Mhm.
characters of Buzz and Woody, they were also on my movie duos, which was that list I mentioned to you that I did like 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's what made me think of Buzz. Woody's kind of running this bedroom, right? Andy's bedroom. And, he's kind of the sheriff, so to speak, and he's the leader of this gang. And
Yeah.
Buzz shows up, this hot new toy, this hot new kid on the block. And, we've all been in situations like that when we were young. And you have to adapt and you have to try to be they're kind of battling to be the alpha. But eventually Buzz says, you know what? I'm cool. Like, you're the one that kind of knows what's going on. I'm going to take your lead. And he just becomes a really good friend to Woody. He becomes, part of the kind of what we're dealing with Andy and what he's going through. And he's part of that support system for the kid that's at the center of this whole story. And as the series goes on, I mean, Buzz continues to be that quote unquote support, whether it's for Woody or even for us as a viewer in a lot of situations. And, Tim Allen, I'm not, like, I don't like bust down the door to see a movie that he's in, but I mean, this is his best work. Like,
Mhm.
in other words, it's weird because I don't know if I would say I'm a Tim Allen fan, but I would say I'm a Buzz Lightyear fan. And
Yeah.
I feel like Tim Allen's voice, is what I know, which is ironic from the movie that we got this past year,
Yeah.
which was not his voice, but
I was
I
gonna
like
say,
that movie too.
how do you feel about Lightyear, the movie?
Yeah, no, I didn't do a review of that one, so you might not know. But
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't hate it. I thought there were
Mhm.
some weird choices, and I think from through the eyes of a child or a young person, it was probably really cool.
Mhm.
But as somebody that has these movies as a foundation, you might kind of scratch your head a little bit, which I was doing.
Yeah.
We actually watched Lightyear on Disney Plus. My family did when we were on vacation this past summer. We went
Mm.
to like this. We got this like mountain cabin or whatever, and we
Mm.
streamed it. And me and my wife, who both are very familiar with the Toy Story films, were just kind of like, "That's not Buzz. Like, who is what is that?" And I had to tell my wife, like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I read that it's not
It's
Tim
it's like
Allen."
the character that the toy is based on. Like, that's
Right.
I
Yes.
actually I like the movie fine. Like, it's
I
not
did
my
too. It's
favorite
okay, but
animated film of the year, but I'm still just cracked up at the whole, like, them having to clarify, like,
why did I mean,
it's
why
not
did
the toy, it's the
yeah, I
character the
just
toy
don't
is based on.
understand. I mean, I get what they're saying, and
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of true in a way, but I'm just like,
I was like, "Are you
it
out of ideas?"
why could
Like,
Tim Allen not do it? Like, I don't understand why
yeah.
he just couldn't have done it, and probably for a
Yeah.
smaller fee, honestly.
Right? Yeah.
It saved a
Yeah.
few bucks.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, but Lightyear aside from this past year, but nevertheless, I,
Yeah.
I love Tim Allen in the role of Buzz, and I think he's a great wingman. He's a great sidekick, and he kind of kept the franchise. He's kind of part of the glue of the whole franchise. Woody. I feel like Woody kind of needed him to carry that
Mhm.
franchise along, as opposed to vice versa, and I kind of got that impression. So it's like the new kind of like technology coming in, and
Yeah.
kind of like what Pixar was probably dealing with, to be honest. And Buzz was a bit of a symbol for that whole thing.
Absolutely. I
So there you
love
go.
Buzz, especially in Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3.
Oh, for sure. Toy Story 3. Forget it.
Yeah. Oh god.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
so good. I mean, one of the best animated films. I don't know if Dan's still watching, but I'll shame him because that's a movie he hasn't seen yet.
My god. Pack
And I know that.
tissues.
I know, and I know that because him and I
Yeah.
did our blind spots episode a couple months ago. Unless he's
Oh,
seen it in the last
yeah.
couple months,
Yeah.
but yeah. So Buzz Lightyear for me, and we are up to our number ones. Nicole, first time guest Nicole Ackman is here, and we've been doing our top 5 movie sidekicks, and here we go. With no crossover so far, which
Yeah.
I got to be honest, I was kind of expecting 1 or 2. So let's see what you got at number 1
Same.
over there.
Okay. I really struggled at first. I was like, "Oh, like, who would I put?" And then it hit me, like, who my favorite sidekick has to be because she's one of my favorite characters of all time. She's
Mhm.
one of the characters in all of film and media that I relate to most.
Mhm.
And she is a character that I think a lot of people love, and I think often sort of forget that she is a sidekick character because it is a weird property in which I feel like people sometimes ignore the hero character almost because all of the side characters are so good. And I am talking about Hermione Granger in the Harry Potter
Mm,
series.
I
Uh,
thought about this. I thought
yeah.
about this, but I didn't want anybody to call me a creep, Nicole. I'm just going to tell
Yeah.
you. But I did
Yep.
think about this. I think it's a great
Yeah.
pick.
And, it's funny now I'm realizing that my top 2 movies are both movies that Emma Watson is in.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah. Clearly, I just like book adaptations with Emma Watson, like, that's my thing.
That's a good universe,
But
though.
yeah, and Emma Watson is one of my favorite actresses. I
Sure.
love her, and I think that her portrayal of Hermione is so beautiful.
Mhm.
I think that they were, Harry Potter as a franchise is very interesting because they got really lucky that they cast kids who ended up being good actors for the most part. And they definitely lucked out with, casting Emma Watson as Hermione Granger. I think that she was so important in the time period that those films were coming out
Mhm.
as representation that, girls could be smart and they could be leaders and they could,
Mhm.
be the one who sort of has it together. And also still at the same time, like care about going to the ball and, care about making friends and
Right, right, right.
all of that. And as a young girl who was very into school and not into sports and
Mhm.
bossy, I really saw myself, but I
Sure.
think that she and Harry's friendship is like one of my favorite friendships on screen of all time.
Yeah.
And I love watching it sort of grow over the 8 films. And she really steps up and becomes, very much her own person, but is
Mhm.
also totally like always there to bolster Harry and figure things out for him and support him in any way he needs. And she, had to go with my girl.
I think it's a great pick. I thought about it actually. This is another
Yeah.
franchise that passed me by and I didn't see till pretty recently. I saw it like 2 or 3 years
Oh
ago with my
yeah.
buddy Dan. We did the
Yeah.
exact same series I was talking about for Lord of the Rings, but I did it with
Yeah.
him about a year before that for Harry Potter. And there were some movies that I could do without, but as the series as a whole, I thought was great. I could see kind of the pop culture phenom that it was, but she had a lot to do with that. I mean, she was so
Yeah.
charming and just all those young actors really as a group. And
Mhm.
it's much like a TV show where the kids kind of grow up throughout the series and go to college or whatever, however long the series lasts, and you kind of get
Yeah.
that from the Harry Potter kids too, because you watch the first one and you watch the last one, it's like a 10-year gap or whatever it is, and you've literally grown up with these characters. And
Yeah.
her and Daniel Radcliffe both, I feel like, I mean, they're blockbuster superstar like
Mhm.
stratosphere actors now, and that all started with Harry Potter. So something to be said for the chemistry that they had as friends. And I think it's a great pick. I thought about it. You'll see why I didn't end up
Okay.
naming her, but I think it's a great pick, and I love her very much too. What'd you think of the Beauty and the Beast adaptation?
Okay, I am a defender.
How are you?
It's
I feel
not
like I knew that,
perfect.
so I was putting you on the spot.
It's not like I don't think it's one of the best of the Disney live action, like,
Sure,
retelling ones. I feel like everyone knows that I will go to bat for Cinderella with my last breath,
sure.
but I actually don't think it's that bad. I think
Yeah,
people
it's
were
not horrible.
unnecessarily harsh to it, and it
It's
gave
not
me, like, Ewan
horrible.
McGregor as Lumiere, so honestly, nothing else matters.
Yeah, that was pretty good too. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't
Yeah.
horrible. I see all the critiques though, but I mean, at the same time, I'm
Yeah.
like, come on, guys, it's not like an abomination or whatever.
I've seen it, like, 6 or 7 times,
Oh
so,
wow,
like
okay.
yeah, yeah, it's a nice movie to put on, like, in
Well,
the
there you go.
background, you know?
Emma Watson, good pick. Hermione won't get an argument for me. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
All right, there you go.
Alright,
So
I'm so excited to hear your number 1.
my number one, if you haven't figured it out yet, is another animated character voiced by the late great Robin Williams, and it is the
Mm.
genie from Aladdin from 1992. First of all, have you seen this? You've seen this, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I've seen,
Okay.
like, even the weird Aladdin, like, VOD sequels.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right. Yeah, like Jafar's
yeah.
Return or whatever. Yeah, yeah.
Literally,
I,
yeah.
I thought you were going to say the voiceover behind the scenes stuff that they put out that when
Oh
Robin
my
Williams
god.
was like voicing
I
the character.
I have I think I've seen, like, every Aladdin related thing there is.
Well, I've told this story on the show before. Some of the listeners have probably heard it, but this movie has such a connection to me personally because my first job as probably like a 16-year-old, 15 or 16-year-old kid was at Eckerd Drugstore, which is, I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like the equivalent of like a Walgreens or a
Oh my
CVS.
god, I remember when we
You
had
remember
those
Eckerd's?
around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I worked at Eckerd's as like a cashier, stock boy, or whatever, and
Mm,
it was right when this would have been in the early '90s because the movie came out in '92. So it was right when they released those TVs that had the VCR built in. Do you know?
yep.
Are you old enough to know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
I had one of those as a kid.
Did you? Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, so that we were selling them, for a few $100 or whatever it was, and we only had one VHS movie that we sold, and it was Aladdin. So
Yeah.
my boss, was like, have it on display or whatever, and just play whatever. Well, the only movie we had was Aladdin, so we just played it on a loop.
Oh my
So me and my
god.
friends that worked there, like, we just saw this movie literally 5, 10 times a week because we're working at
Yeah.
Eckerd's and it's the only thing that is playing. And then on top of that, I mean, Robin Williams is just gives such a tremendous performance, and a lot of it is improvised. A lot of it's his stand-up kind of comedy routine and impersonations that he throws in there. I mean, this is a Disney movie. This is a kid's hand-drawn Disney movie, and this guy's doing impersonations of like Ed Sullivan and Arsenio Hall. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
5-year-olds don't know what the hell he's talking about, but he's just so energetic and charismatic and just magnetic, even as a voice, not even as visually. And you're just drawn to him as an actor. I always was, and I followed his whole career. And aside from Good Will Hunting, this is probably his best performance, which is, in my opinion, which is crazy because it's just a voiceover, but he
Yeah.
just brought so much energy and passion to the role and just created this just iconic imagery that'll live on in, Disney lore forever. I mean, he's one of the most iconic characters in the whole canon, in my opinion. And it's because of his voice work in this movie. As a sidekick to Aladdin and kind of his wingman, like, hey, dude, I'm going to help you
Yep.
get Jasmine. Like, let's ride carpets. Let's do the thing, So he kind of helps him get through all that stuff too, which is great. And then where Aladdin kind of turns the tables at the end and says, you know what, man, I'm going to give you what you deserve. I'm going to let you
Mhm.
be free, and kind of the symbolism built in there as to kind of how we sometimes take advantage of our best friends or people that are there for us, and how that kind of comes back around in the end too. So I think it's a beautiful film. The music is fucking like unmatched. I mean, such a great soundtrack. Easily one of my favorite animated films of all time. So The Genie, my number one. What do you have to say, Miss Nicole Ackman?
I love that. I think that the genie is, sort of one of the most important like animated characters that probably was ever made, because I think that he lays the groundwork for a lot of the sort of sidekick characters that come after. At least, if they're
Mhm.
talking, I feel like there's sort of some inspiration from the genie. I think that, you could maybe argue that like you don't get Donkey without the genie. I think you could
Right.
definitely argue you don't get Olaf without the genie.
Exactly.
Whether modern parents like think that's a blessing or a curse. Uh, but I
Well,
think he sort
when
of,
you mentioned what I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah.
when you mentioned earlier when we were talking about Donkey, that was what I was referring to. Is like, yeah,
Yeah,
that kind of came from Robin Williams and the Genie.
absolutely. And I think he definitely set that precedent for sort of balancing that humor of things that, that adults are going to find really funny, things that kids are going to find funny, things that everyone will find funny.
Mhm.
And he's such a great character. And I also think that Robin Williams, voice performance for that role is so important, because I feel like Aladdin as a story, there's like some stuff in it that if it's not played right, it can be kind of weird. Like,
Mhm.
it's one of those kids films that I feel like if you think about it too hard, like, it starts to get odd.
Sure.
And a lot of that is that dynamic between Aladdin and the genie, and I feel like the fact that it's not weird, and the fact that it's, so endearing is largely due to Robin Williams' work, and
Mhm.
how he plays that character and how he forms it,
Sure.
with his comedy, but then there's also a lot of heart there. So,
Yeah.
that's a great choice.
Yeah, and and thank you. And anybody, I mean, obviously most people have probably seen it, but I mean, there's a lot of really cool clips on YouTube of, Robin Williams kind of going through the process, and he's in the booth, and
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
he's literally just doing impersonations and it's
Mhm.
just like winging it, and it's crazy to
Yeah.
see, what the animators came up with to kind of match his frantic kind of
Mhm.
performance and come up with this beautiful thing that I think is easily one of the best Disney films ever made, in my opinion. I mean, and Disney's not, I mean, they're not schlocky. They're not doing, five movies. I mean, they got,
Yeah.
500 movies to choose from, you know what I mean? And this is one of the
Yeah.
best ever. So
And I
that's my
do
number
think
one.
that that's why the Aladdin, like, live action does not work for me,
Right.
is because Robin Williams as the genie is so pivotal
Yeah.
to that movie working that,
I
without him.
wonder, not to get off on a tangent, but
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes it's baffling to me why studios or directors will touch projects that it's just like, how can you add to that? You know,
Right, like, you can't improve that.
it's just like,
Yeah.
how do you? And I understand wanting to introduce it to a new generation, and like I
Mhm.
get
I
all,
get that
because
more with something like Cinderella, or something like, the upcoming Snow White movie I'm really
hmm
excited for, because those are things that I think that style of animation, the sort of way that that story unfolds, either like
hmm
aren't appealing to a lot of kids these days, or maybe aren't something that parents like think the messaging in it is super great for kids.
right, sure,
Um, Whereas something like Aladdin, or something like, even Beauty and the Beast, that still like absolutely holds up,
Mhm.
I'm like, feels weird to attempt to do better than that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like we went to see The Lion King, the new one with
Yeah.
Beyonce, and I didn't hate it, but if I'll put it this way, my son was like I think 7 at the time. My Not my young one,
Mhm.
but my 7-year-old. He's 9 now. We went to see it and he loved it. Like to him, that's his Lion King. Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah. Yeah.
to me, I'm going, what did I do as a parent? Like, why?
Yeah.
Love the 90s one.
Yeah.
Like, what? But I think that to your point, the digital age. I mean, it's the digital
Mhm.
animation, it's the CGI. That's what kids are responding to more than the art of kind of this old school hand drawn stuff. And I think that's unfortunate, but I kind of understand it at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go. So my number one, Genie from Aladdin. No crossover, Nicole. First time guest. You
I'm
came on.
impressed. Yeah.
Yeah, we did our thing. 10 different character or 10 different entries here. I would say characters, but you had a
Mhm.
couple. You had a duo to start the list. That's fine.
I did. I did.
Yeah, I respect it. I respect it. All right, guys, we're gonna take a break and we're gonna come back. We will wrap up our top fives and we'll give our honorable mentions. And I want to shout out the fans online too, Nicole. I do that to end every episode. Real quick though, I want to remind everyone the Golden Peas Movie Awards is coming up. I put on my own movie awards every year, and it kind of resembles the Golden Globes / Oscars, all that kind of stuff. But I
Mhm.
put it out to you. You guys came up with the ballot, and voting is going to be going on. It's actually going on right now as this episode's airing. The award ceremony is going to be March 13th, which is strategically the day after the Oscars. So when we all have that Oscars hangover and we want to feel good, we can tune into the Golden Peas. And the nominations are announced on January 16th. So just remember that, guys. All the information for that will be in the show notes as well. We're going to take a quick promo break for that. And when we come back, we will wrap up our top fives and give our honorable mentions. So everybody sit tight. We will be right back. Are you doing good over there, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm all good.
Did you enjoy that?
I did. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I thought it was good too. Um, Let me pull up the fan feedback real quick so I can have that ready to
Okay.
go. And won't take up too much more of your time here. When do you start back at state? Are you guys back next week or?
Yeah, we're back next week.
Okay. Yeah, my daughter
So,
starts back next. My daughter's at UNCSA, the film school in Winston.
oh, amazing. Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
she's doing cinematography and editing. That's her thing.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
Oh, that's so
she's
cool.
she's like, I'm gonna get to Hollywood. I'm gonna fix the academy. And I'm like, all
Oh my
right,
God.
get
Please,
in
if you
there.
could, that would be great. Yeah.
I'm like, we need that young wave. Let's go.
Yeah,
So
no
yeah.
kidding.
But yeah, she was like the year that Parasite, took over is when she like really
Yeah.
started getting into that. So she's like, "Oh, that's not
Oh,
too bad." And
wow.
I'm like, "Just hang tight. I'm sure they'll
Right.
disappoint
Like,
you."
just wait and see. Yeah.
But yeah, so
She came in at the right time to have a good view.
but she starts back next week too. So
Mhm.
all right, so I got that pulled up there. All right, just give me like so when we come back from break, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
ask you to just list your five again. So just go from five to
Okay.
one, just
Yep.
list them real quick, and then you can
Mhm.
give your honorable mentions. But just
Okay, perfect.
sometimes that throws people off because they think we're going back and
Yeah.
forth, but we're not. So
Okay.
all right, so I'll come back in just a second. Welcome back, guys. As I said pre-break, Nicole Ackman is here, first-time guest from Oscar Central. It was a blast talking to her about our favorite movie, Sidekicks. Nicole, just remind everybody over there what you had as your five again.
Absolutely. My five were at number five, Tanya and Rosie, my cheating one from Mamma Mia. My fourth was Bucky Barnes from Captain America. My third was Samwise from Lord of the Rings. Number two, Patrick from Perks of Being a Wallflower. And then number one, my winner, Hermione Granger from the Harry Potter series.
Yeah, for sure. Great list. My number five was Hit Girl from Kick Ass. My number five was Donkey from the Shrek films. My number three was Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. My number two was Buzz Lightyear from the Toy Story franchise. And my number one was the Genie, voiced by Robin Williams from Aladdin. So there you go. Great discussion. I really do appreciate it. However, you got some honorable mentions over there, right? So what
Absolutely.
characters didn't quite crack your top five that you want to shout out real quick?
Okay, so I mentioned earlier there's a Nick Cage movie that I wanted to mention real quick, and that's Riley from National Treasure.
Okay.
I love Riley. He's a great sidekick, and I feel like he's one
Sure.
of those earliest examples of like the guy in the chair sidekick type.
Yeah, right.
Um, I had to
Good
mention
pick.
Wilson from Castaway
Hey, I did too.
because
He's in my honorables as well. Yeah.
yeah, that's a fascinating just example of, it's an
Props.
animated object, but it's a great
Yeah.
sidekick. Felt like especially this year, I had to say Goose from Top Gun.
Yeah.
You know, one of
Yeah. I
the
thought
one of the
so too.
greats.
Mhm.
I also wanted to mention Finn from the Star Wars sequel series. I
Mm, good
love
pick.
Finn. I think, he's such a fun character and I love John Boyega. And then I was like, all right, try and narrow it down to one Disney animated sidekick. And I
Mhm.
actually came up with Pascal from Tangled is my favorite.
Oh, wow.
I
Interesting
think
pick.
it's such a great example of a non-speaking sidekick who still
Yeah.
has so much personality.
Yeah, that's true. No, that's a good pick. That's just a
Mhm.
surprising one, but I love
Yeah.
that because it's kind of an under
Yeah.
the radar pick. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So my number 6 is the obvious one that I left out of my top 5. But if I was just having this conversation at a bar with you, this
Mhm.
would probably be the first name I would mention. But it's Chewbacca from the Star Wars films.
He's on my,
I mean,
like, long list. Yeah.
yeah. I
I
mean,
love
Han
Chewie.
Solo's sidekick. I mean, possibly the first like cinematic, like just like known as a sidekick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Aside from like the buddy cop stuff, but yeah,
Right.
in those adventure films. And then you mentioned Samwise already, but he would have been on my number 7.
Mhm.
My number 8 is Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
You killed my father, prepare to die. But he is a great sidekick to Wesley and just, helps
Mhm.
him kind of on his romantic adventure. So I love that character. I love that movie. It's one of my comfort films. I watch it at least once a year. So Inigo from Princess Bride. My number 9 would have been Wilson from Castaway, which
Yep.
you already mentioned. And then my number 10 is John Goodman as Walter from The Big Lebowski. You ever
Okay,
seen The Big
yeah.
Lebowski? I mean,
Yeah. I
just such a
mean,
foul mouth, kind of like crazy dude that is not really
yeah.
a very good sidekick,
Yeah.
but he definitely has accepted his place in the circle of friends as
Mhm.
the sidekick to the dude. And
And I
it's
feel like
just so
that's sort of a sidekick, like, type, like, archetype almost.
sure.
Yeah.
And he's just, I mean, the movie's great. I love the movie. The Coens, is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I mean, just such a memorable, like, just the def. If you look up comic relief, I mean, that
Yeah.
is comic relief. I mean, that movie has so
Yeah.
much tension and like other stuff going on, and it's like complicated plot points. It's like a heist movie almost. And then when John Goodman shows up, it's like not even like you don't even have to overthink it. It's just hilarious. Like he's just a funny
Yeah.
guy, and he just brings so much levity to the film. And it's one of my favorite roles of his actually. And he's done so much good stuff. But I equate it to his role like in Raising Arizona. It's like
Mm.
he doesn't really need to be there for the plot to move forward,
Yeah.
but like you're so happy that he is. You know what I mean? It's so
Mhm.
memorable. So
Yeah.
yeah, that would be my number 10. So there you go. So to wrap up every episode, Nicole, we head over to social media and we see what the fans had to say in the old suggestion box, is what I call it. So guys, if you have not joined up yet, please check the show notes and join up to the Facebook fan community because that is where I interact with my fans the most. And Nicole, I just said over there, who are your favorite movie sidekicks? So
Mhm.
let's see what we got over there.
Okay.
Christiani, patron and friend of the show, says the obvious choice is Chewbacca,
Yep.
but he's also going to toss in Silent Bob. Hey, we didn't mention Silent Bob from Clerks
Okay.
and from
Yeah.
the US. Are you a fan of those Kevin Smith films?
No, I haven't seen
You're
him.
like, no, not really.
I saw that on a couple of the lists that I looked at
Yeah,
though.
sure. Yeah, I'm a big fan of
Yeah.
Clerks and, well, really in
Mhm.
Mallrats too. But after that, I was kind of like, I can take them or leave them. But I mean, generally
Yeah.
speaking, I'm a fan of the View Askew universe. So it's a good shout out. And then he also says Red from Shawshank. That's a good one. Morgan Freeman.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
That's a good one. John Campbell says Short Round from the Indiana Jones film. What do you think of the Short Round?
Oh, yeah. That's a great
Yeah,
one.
yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah, exactly.
Sam Wise from Lord of the Rings says my buddy Dan from Netflix and
Mhm.
Swill. And another shout out for Short Round from Joey Mills.
Nice.
Another shout out for Chewbacca from Tony from Take Two. Let's
Nice.
see. David Powell, patron and friend of the show, says Stormy from Odd Thomas. That's an interesting one that I don't think
Hmm.
anybody else is going to mention.
That's creative.
Yeah. He also says
Yeah.
Spock, of course, from Star Trek.
Of course.
Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China, and Doc Holliday from Tombstone. That's an interesting one,
Oh, okay.
but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Paul also says Jack Burton because Wang is the hero in Big Trouble in Little China. So Kurt Russell's the sidekick, and
Okay.
he's always kind of taking that stance. Let's see. Dan Roski, top tier patron of the show, a promising young loyal. He says his obvious ones are Chewie, Spock,
Mhm.
and Goose, but he's also going to say Smithers from The Simpsons, Robin Quivers from Private Parts, Cameron from Ferris Bueller. There you go.
There you go.
Ellis Redding from Shawshank, and then Tommy DeVito from Goodfellas. That's a good one. That's Joe Pesci's
Oh,
character.
okay, yeah.
That's a good one. Again, I don't know if he's a good sidekick, but he's
E
one that you're never going to forget.
Right, right. He's definitely memorable.
Exactly. Stephen Burns says Wilson from Castaway. So we
Classic.
both echo that.
Yeah.
Josh Ragland, patron and friend of the show, says Ed from Shaun of the Dead, Art from The Burbs, Wallace from Scott Pilgrim. That's a good one, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And think about that. And Damien from Meat Girls. That's good too.
Oh my god, wait, that's such a okay, I feel like there's
That's a
some of
good
these
one.
that I just wasn't thinking of as sidekicks, but they totally are.
They are. I didn't think of that either, but that's a good one.
Yeah.
Jared Taylor, patron and friend of the show, says Garth from Wayne's World. Of course, played
Mm,
by Dana Carvey. That's a
mhm.
classic one that I saw on a lot of lists.
Yep.
Brad Hargis, patron and friend of the show, says Paul Walker from the Fast and the Furious franchise. Of course, rest in peace. I think that's a
Yeah.
good one. I don't know. Is he a sidekick in those movies? Though? I feel like he's
I
the lead in
don't
those.
know.
Well, I
Right?
guess Vin Diesel's the lead, maybe.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I don't know. They kind of co-leads, I guess. But yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
shout out because I love Paul Walker.
Mhm.
Michael Hill, patron of the show, says Jack Burton, Samwise, the genie. There you go.
There you go.
Bartok from Anastasia, Hit Girl.
I thought about Bartok, he's on my long list.
There you go. Lauren Scott, who actually works at Disney World and is one of the Disney
Oh my
princesses, but I
gosh.
can't tell you which one because it's supposed to be a
Okay.
secret.
Yep.
But she says from Mulan. She got Eddie Murphy from Mulan there.
There
So
we go.
yeah, you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. So
Yeah.
great shout out there, and that is a great caricature for sure.
Mhm.
Let's see what else I got here. Larkin, friend of the show, says Bella Lugosi from Ed Wood. Oh yeah, because he got the joke about being Karloff's sidekick. Yeah, I remember
Oh,
that.
yep. Yep.
Yeah, when Martin Landau gives that little diatribe in the movie. That's right.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And,
Yep.
and then he also says De Niro and Jackie Brown. That's a good pick. I take
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I take that for sure. That's definitely one of those like roles that you see. I'm a Tarantino fan, but that's one of those roles you see where you're like, I can't believe De Niro did this, but he did.
I
And
was literally just thinking, like, that's one of those,
it's not
like, I can't believe
it's
it's
not
De
a
Niro type of
yeah, it's
thing.
not a De Niro
Yeah.
role, you know what I mean? But it does stand out for sure. So that's a good shout
Yeah.
out. Guys, thank you so much for the suggestions. I really appreciate it. And if I didn't get to yours, I apologize, but I thank you so much for all the shout outs. Nicole Agman, it was a blast to have you here. Now, you're doing way too much stuff because it's Oscar season, and I get
Yeah.
that. But I really appreciate you carving out the time to be here. It means a lot to me. Just remind everybody real quick where they can look you up online and follow you over there.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Mhm.
But you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at Nicole Ackman 16. And I've got link trees and places to where all the rest of my work is.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of yours on Twitter. I've been following you for a few years now. And guys, make sure you look her up. I will put all of her information down in the show notes. And once again, Nicole, I really appreciate you being here. All right, guys, I will be back next week. We will have another fun top 5 for you. Until then, everybody take care. All right, you can stop your recording over there if you want, Nicole.
Alrighty. Perfect. There we go.
So, I hope you enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was super fun.
I don't think this is going to hang up on you. I'm going to end the broadcast, but I think we'll
Okay.
still be on here. If it does, I'll text you on
Yeah.
Twitter. I don't think it's going
Okay.
to. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.